Good morning and welcome to another hour at the Golden Hour. It's a chance for you and I to sit down for 1 hour and each do something that we want to get done and get to do it together. So, for you, that obviously could be studying, it could be just companionship while you're working on a project, like for work, or you could be decluttering, you could be researching something, you could be writing, crafting, knitting, who knows, scrapbooking, but you get to sit down and devote this time to it and have some companionship while you do it. So, I am here every Monday through Friday from 9:45 to 10:45 a.m. Central Standard Time in the United States if you want to catch me live. And of course, you can always watch the replays as you continue to do work. So I am continuing to read through the book Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, loving all the amazing concepts he addresses, which each one in and of themselves is its own book. Um, so, so we are here in the book now talking about um, we've become farmers now, and there are peasants who are spending their whole life farming, and they're trying to plan for the future and things like that. And so then he talks about how um, what sort of sprung up around peasants were elites, and the you've got farmers, you've got elites. This eventually sort of leads to the development of towns and villages and cities, um, and so this gives rise basically to the need to cooperate more on a bigger scale. It gives rise to the need to agree or to at least moderate disagreement. Um, so sure, I can farm some and you can farm some, but what happens when we disagree? Um, about where we should be planting fields or things like that. Um, and the idea that yeah, disagreement has to be moderated, even if you could sort of look at the facts and go, hey, no matter what we do, we'll have enough food. Like, that's a good thing. That if you don't sort of moderate disagreements in a way that it's sort of irrelevant, that your survival needs are met. I don't know. I'm doing a poor job of summarizing his thought there. Um, so he's saying, sadly, the diligent peasants almost never achieved the future economic security they so craved through their hard work in the present. Everywhere, rulers and elites sprang up, living off the peasants' surplus food and leaving them with only a bare subsistence. And I like this. It says the extra they produced fed the tiny minority of elites: kings, government officials, soldiers, priests, artists, and thinkers who fill the history books. History is something that very few people have been doing, while everyone else was plowing fields and carrying water buckets. I just love that observation. Um, yeah, he's talking about needing to reach agreement. And saying, sorry, I'm going back and kind of looking at my notes, saying, okay, so if we need to agree, but we're not really evolutionarily equipped to agree on a really large scale, so what happens? Well, it's myth to the rescue again, but this time in the form of law and order. So the problem at the root of such calamities is that humans evolved for millions of years in small bands of a few dozen individuals. The handful of millennia separating the agricultural revolution from the appearance of cities, kingdoms, and empires was not enough time to allow an instinct for mass cooperation to evolve. Despite the lack of such biological instincts, during the foraging era, hundreds of strangers were able to cooperate thanks to their shared myths. However, this cooperation was loose and limited. So again, do we have a history of some cooperation? Yes. Myth got us beyond our intimate group. It got us to a larger group, that sort of, threshold of 150. And from time to time, it got us maybe past 150. We would have cooperated here and there as the need arose. But on the whole, we didn't sort of have enough time to naturally involve this real drive for mass cooperation. So, he was saying, what on earth could be strong enough of a force to get people to cooperate on a large scale. And he said, myths, it transpired, are stronger than anyone could have imagined. And he does also point out cooperation sounds very altruistic, but is not always voluntary and seldom egalitarian. So I think that's a really fair um, distinction, an important distinction that definitely, when I hear the word cooperation, I'm thinking of the willing and altruistic kind. And he means it in the sense of people are, literally working together for a group goal, but that doesn't mean that you're always a willing participant in that. Um, then he goes on to talk about how can myths sustain empires. And he talks about the Code of Hammurabi of circa 1776 BC and the American Declaration of Independence. And he's putting these two things in a stark opposition here, because the Code of Hammurabi is very much about hierarchy, and that your social class determines your worth as well as your gender, and just outlines the actual. So it says the code lists about 300 judgments. So things that are like, if a superior man should blind the eye of another superior man, they shall blind his eye. If he should break the bone of another superior man, they shall break his bone. If he should blind the eye of a commoner, or break the bone of a commoner, he shall weigh and deliver 60 shekels of silver. So it's a different judgment based on your class, and the same thing plays out with class and gender. So, of course, we in modern times balk at that, but he's pointing out that it was a, what does he call it, a cooperation manual, and told everybody how to work together, how it outlined the rules of how we then at that time were going to function as a group. So here he says, like Hammurabi's code, the American founding document promises that if humans act according to its sacred principles, millions of them would be able to cooperate effectively, living safely and peacefully in a just and prosperous society. Okay. So then he goes on to say, all right, these things are imagined orders, is what he's calling them. He's saying, we believe in a particular order not because it is objectively true, but because believing in it enables us to cooperate effectively and forge a better society. Imagined orders are not evil conspiracies or useless mirages. Rather, they are the only way large numbers of humans can cooperate effectively. So then he's going on to say, if people realize that human rights exist only in the imagination, isn't there a danger that our society will collapse? Such fears are well justified. An imagined order is always in danger of collapse because it depends upon myths, and myths vanish once people stop believing in them. In order to safeguard an imagined order, continuous and strenuous efforts are imperative. Some of these efforts take the shape of violence and coercion. Again, I'm just reading what I highlighted. However, an imagined order cannot be sustained by violence alone. To say that a social order is maintained by military force immediately raises the question, what maintains the military order? It's impossible to organize an army solely by coercion. At least some of the commanders and soldiers must truly believe in something, be it God, honor, motherland, manhood, or money. So his other argument is an imagined order is sustained by people who truly believe in it. So as I was reading, one of the things that I was wondering, when he's talking about, here we were sort of farmers, and then those farmers ended up, forfeiting some of their crops to the elites. So I'm, sort of writing down the question, what caused the independent farmer to become a subject? Just thinking out loud in my notebook. And then, I'm thinking, well, maybe sort of a willing exchange for protection, even if they didn't know they were kind of making a bad deal. Was that part of it? Or did they have no choice but to comply? Were they forced to, hey, you can die or you can give me some of your crops? I'll kill you now because the king says you have to give me your crops. So, okay, probably a combination of both. And so he's sort of addressing that question that came up for me in a way. How do we do that? How do we convince individuals to get on board with the cooperation manual? And so I was thinking, oh, maybe there's some sort of appeal to an exchange that makes an appeal to your survival, or just straight up violence. And so here he's highlighting force, but then he's arguing for belief that that's the main thing. That force, yes, is a factor, but belief is another one that really helps enforce it. And then, how do you cause people to believe in an imagined order, such as Christianity, democracy, or capitalism? First, you never admit that the order is imagined. You always insist that the order sustaining society is an objective reality created by the great gods or by the laws of nature. Then it says you also educate people thoroughly. From the moment they are born, you constantly remind them of the principles of the imagined order, which are incorporated into anything and everything. Then he says three main factors prevent people from realizing that the order organizing their lives exists only in their imagination. So he's talking about just diving deeper into that concept, like, because on some level you might say, how are we convincing billions of people of things that aren't true? And he's saying, here's how it's in the water, kind of a thing. So his first one is the imagined order is embedded in the material world. And so, even just arguing things like architecture reinforces individualism in modern society, that members of a household in modern Western society, and members of a household have individual rooms, that's just one subtle way that's reinforced into our sort of subconscious. Then he says another way is the imagined order shapes our desires. Our personal desires thereby become the imagined order's most important defenses. Even what people take to be their most personal desires are usually programmed by the imagined order. So basically, these sort of ideas or principles have been suggested to us and then become ingrained in who we are. So we might think that we naturally believe in individualism or something like that, and so when really that's something that's come from without first before it got ingrained in us. And I think that's about where I stopped. So that is my current synopsis of what we've got going on. I read a record 14 pages yesterday, so we'll see how many interruptions come today or whatnot. But I'm enjoying going through this book with you all. I hope you are too. And I will reset the timer and we can get started on whatever you're working on. that. I don't know how I did that. Is it me in both of them? Whoa, it is. Thank you for pointing that out. I think I know how it happened. I don't know what it is. When I was going to type, I wasn't in the chat box, so when I hit Shift B, I must have done something. So cool. Okay. All right, so that's the end of the stream for today. I hope you are happy with what you got done. And yeah, I hope to see you tomorrow. Bye.